Hey everyone, today we're going to cover Earth Beatdown. Now this, in set 1, was probably one of the strongest decks in that current format. And now that we're all the way at the end of Frostfall, this actually managed to take down a tournament yesterday. By the time I'm recording this was Sunday. I played in the event myself. I almost made top 8. I had to win it in the last round, and the game went to time, and the tiebreakers are, for people coming from like a game like Flesh and Blood, they do have tiebreakers that do determine a winner, and it's based on life total, and I think I was like a couple spirits short, so like a few life, and so I lost the round and then didn't make top 8, but we're going to run through the Earth Beatdown list today. So the way that this deck plays is it's pretty aggressive, plays mostly on the board, but of course, you know, we still have like the traditional back row. If we go into the Elestrals, we have some pretty cool stuff. So obviously, Earth focused with a splash of Thunder. Thunder just has really incredible card advantage between Astrabbit, Elechick, and Jolton. Elechick and Jolton just let you tutor for something and also replace, you know, with the card in hand. So not only are they streamlining your deck, but there are also card advantage and good stat lines left over. I think it'd probably be best to maybe start with the Elestrals. So we're going to start with Equilinx. So Equilinx is kind of a Nexus target for the deck that's going to let you Nexus around, but the really powerful part of it is being able to destroy a rune. So this obviously can target stadiums, divine runes, but also this targets things that are face down. So if your opponent has set back row, you can target something, and this will out a lot of counter runes. So if it's PTA, they would need to play Poison Tipped Arrow in response to the Equilinx, right? Because they would have to respond to the cast. If they don't play PTA in response to the cast and you Nexus and you target it, that card is just gone forever. If it's Tsunami, they could respond with Tsunami, so that one is the one that can get around the Equilinx the first turn it's played. And then the rest of them are really good, right? So if you hit Shield, no chance to play Shield. If you hit Gorgons, they could respond with Gorgons. But depending on what they would prefer to do, sometimes just paying the 2 life when it was going to be destroyed anyway, maybe isn't entirely worth it. So, you know, Gorgons is a maybe, but a lot of times it's very strong to hit a Gorgons. And so basically, currently in the game, it's going to hit a lot of very relevant things. And this is going to pair really well with Demeter. So you can play this, you can play your Divine Demeter with a bunch of Earth Spirits, put Earth Spirits on the Equilinx, target a back row. If it's not one of the mentioned ones, right, and you hit something like a Shield or maybe a Gorgons and they let the Gorgons go, then you also have the extra spirits on the Equilinx, and then you can buff it with the Demeter and then just hit in for a bunch of spirit damage. So to clarify this, we'll go and look at Demeter real quick before we continue on. So Demeter is your Divine Rune. This lets you come down with a total of, I believe, 4 Earth Spirits is the max if you include the one that it costs to enchant. And you just pay 1 of the spirits off of it, and you give something +3 attack to the turn. Going into the rest of Elestrals, we have Moss Station. Moss Station's just a really good stat beater, right? 6 power is pretty relevant right now. You can either leave it in attack position and basically create like a pseudo wall, or you can clear high defense stat Elestrals, right? So you can clear like Astrabbit with this. You can clear a lot of very strong 5 powers, so like Galaxia. And even though it goes into defense after you attack with it, so it's liable to being attacked to the 1 stat line, the 1 defense, you can obviously protect it with counter runes. That's ideally what you would want to do. And with the lack of basically special summoning currently, most people are only going to be playing 1 thing a turn. So if you have 1 answer in your back row, so whether that's like Shield, Tsunami, Gorgons, it's pretty easy to keep this thing alive. Also with Demeter, you have access to Altar of Stars. That's really important here. So you can Nexus, which is, you know, less crucial. It's more of a requirement, honestly, playing this card. But you can swap the position, right? So you could wait for them to attack. You could then flip it, and then it'll actually win in the combat with the Elestral that's attacking it. So really good combat trick. Also just helps preserve it. You can also use this as a combat trick into your opponent. So you can rest something of theirs that's like high in attack, right? Or on the flip side, if they have a high defense Elestral, you can swap its position and then basically exploit its like lower attack. So this card's really flexible and very powerful. The main drawback is you have to be in a deck that has good Divine Runes basically, or Stadiums, so that you have the ability to Nexus pretty consistently. So not every single deck is going to want to play Altar, and also Altar usually works better with decks that are playing more tempo on the board, more aggression, right? Because if you're playing like a stall deck or something like that, like something that plays a bunch of defense Elestrals, you know, swapping around, you know, attack and, you know, defense, it doesn't matter as much compared to if you're usually interacting with the board every single turn and trying to attack the board or your opponent. Next up, we have Viserys. This is probably the strongest card in the deck. You can maybe argue between it and Equilynx and Astrabbit, but Viserys in terms of card advantage just is so powerful. So 5 attack, already we're talking good stat lines, and every time it destroys something, it's going to go summon a second copy, and then you can get all the way up to 3 copies. Once you have the second copy in, you have a 6 power. The third copy is a 7 power. That doesn't even matter, but it's just more of the raw advantage, right? A lot of the times you're only going to be able to summon one thing a turn with the current state of the game. So being able to cheat in not only tutors, but extra summons of very powerful cards is really good. It comes into defense, but once again, if you have the counter rune protection or something like Alter, it's good to go. We have Astrabbit. Astrabbit's insane. You look at the top 3, you put one in the hand. You already know how this all goes. For anyone who's somewhat familiar with the game, you'll probably know most of the Thunder cards. And so we have Elechick, that's going to search your Divine Rune, and you're going to have a 1 of Jolton. This was inspiration from the list that won on Sunday. I believe had a 1 copy of Jolton. Maybe you could flip it around a little bit, maybe 2, like a cut somewhere else for a little bit more consistency, but being able to go get your Forest, that's just going to buff all of your Elestrals. And don't forget, Forest with something like Equilynx is also really strong because you're going to be able to nexus extra stuff onto Elestrals and then be able to buff them even higher with the Forest. And then if we go into our counter runes, it's really standard stuff. We have Gorgons, Poison Tipped Arrow, and Tsunami. Those are 3-0s. We have 3 Alter Stars. We have 2 shields just because shields sometimes can be pretty expensive. Doesn't actually really generate any true card advantage outside of the tempo that's gained with it. So you do reset your opponent's summon, and if they have ascended into a higher cost Elestral, that can be quantified as more valuable. However, some things that can basically remove stuff on table are usually a little bit better. Also, shield gets outed pretty frequently. Things like Lavalith, or even like in this example here of Equilynx would out shield. So sometimes having less of them is a little bit better because all these are more flexible in response to effects like those, where shield just kind of gets blasted. We have 2 Ambrosia. It may be correct to go up to 3. It really does depend on your personal philosophy behind the card as well as the meta. So, maybe we make a cut somewhere. It could be the 3rd copy of Demeter for the 3rd Ambrosia. That'd be a very clean cut. And of course, we have 3 copies of Earthquake, probably one of the most powerful invoke runes in the game. Basically, every single deck currently wants to play it. I'm playing a Water Thunder list, and I have 2 Earth Spirits in my deck, so I can play 3 copies of Earthquake and Ambrosia them back in. So, the card is insane. And then if we go into a side decks are still really rudimentary. There's not a whole lot going on, and of course, first of all, we can see the spirit count here. But side decks are still pretty all over the place. There's just not enough good tech cards, in my opinion, out there right now, but we do have some pretty simple stuff. So we have Lavalith and then the Fire Spirits to facilitate that, along with Resting. You can play these sometimes going second if your opponent establishes anything past 1 Elestral on their first turn. So they go like Elestral Stadium, Elestral Divine Rune, something like that. You have a pretty clear answer to that. Although most people aren't going to be doing that, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. But more importantly, these are against Thunder strategies, right? Or any kind of Nexus style strategy where decks will be playing Divine Runes into you. So if you're playing against, some of the grindier like Crab Beatdown, right? We just covered that deck on the channel. So those like grindy mid-range base decks that aren't really playing Divine Runes or Stadiums, or just going, raw stat lines on units. Something like Resting or Lavalith are less important. We have some Vertilith here. This is basically just for healing, right? Sometimes it's important when you go into game 3 and you have to deal with the tiebreakers, so also this can be good into more aggressive strategies or more grindy based game plans where the overall spirit count is actually what ends up mattering. That can be really true, especially against some of the more attrition based decks. So if you're playing against something like that mid-range crap soup or whatever, that's a matchup where your spirit count really does matter. Or something like the Water Nexus list, like those games get super grindy, they go on for so long, and so your spirits are your resources. So this lets you stay in the game longer, because there's a lot of games where if your opponent's playing some of these healing effects, right, if you're playing Water Nexus, you're playing Dratagua along with Poseidon, so you get to heal back so many spirits, you get to keep playing the game, and your opponent may just kind of run out of spirits at some point, just playing their 1-drop Elestral, playing their counter rune from the back row, If you're just going 1 for 1 all the time, eventually someone's going to run out of spirits first. And if you have some life gain in here, then you get to keep on playing the game longer than your opponent. So Verdolith is important for a few different reasons. We have 2 copies in here. We also have a 3rd copy of Ambrosia, same philosophy. A 3rd copy of Forest if you're playing against decks that play for stadium control. Off the top of my head, this would be really common into Thunder. Thunder really cares about having Mount Olympus, also because they play Race to the Top. So their stadium is very important. So if you're able to clear their stadium and play for that side of the board, you're in a much better position. And then we have 2 copies of Pandora's Box. This can be good against a mix of different strategies, but specifically like toolbox style decks or decks that are trying to combo into higher ascensions. So that'd be something like a Cryo Scorch style combo deck, or even like Moorfrost decks that are trying to tutor to basically complete certain chains of combos. That's where you're going to find a lot of value out of something like Pandora's Box. So that's the idea behind like this sideboard. Obviously tailored to your locals. You could even include something like Veritaqua if you're playing against more Waterstall, Poison Nectar if you're playing against Fruit combo. There's all kinds of different things, but that's the overall breakdown for this list. So hopefully it's enough to get you started if you want to give this deck a shot. It's pretty fun, and I like it a lot. It's more aggro focused, but I definitely like playing the decks that are more Elestrals based. I mean, they all are, obviously, but this one feels uniquely special in terms of what it's doing on the board. So definitely a fun deck, very powerful. If you want to give it a shot, until next time, thank you for watching.